What were the tech highlights of 2018?
And what were the low points?
Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, is proudly brought to you by Belkin.
Welcome to Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, where we talk to Australia's leading technology journalists to get the stories behind the news of the week. I'm Alex Kidman, and I'm joined by a man who says it's not really Christmas until he sees Hans Gruber fall from Nakatomi Plaza, Adam Turner, as we go behind the headlines in search of the big picture. We're also joined once more by acting Gizmodo Australia editor, and the only person I've ever dedicated her own personal recurring hashtag to, Tegan Jones. Tegan, welcome back.
G'day, mates.
Oh, no, you can't go there. Now, I was told that your official title is Reigning Queen of Gizmodo and that we should avoid making eye contact. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm getting both of those things put on my new business cards, actually.
Right alongside the Channel 9 logo?
That's right, exactly right.
Ouch, too soon?
Well, speaking of too soon, it feels like the end of the year is wrapping up too soon. We've got a fortnight to go in 2018, and it feels almost as though it was only last week that I was sitting across a room full of journalists at CES recording our first show for the year, but this is our last show. So I think it's time for us to look over the biggest news stories of 2018, and I guess, look, it wouldn't be Vertical Hold if we didn't jump in with the soup du jour, the NBN. Adam, was 2018 kind to the NBN, do you think?
Relatively speaking, yes, only because 2017 was so bad. 2017 was the year that, what did they say, all the chickens came home to roost. All the stupid decisions they made and bad things they've been doing came and bit them on the arse.
And you should never build a broadband network out of chickens, people.
No. Chicken to the nude. And yeah, but so then by the end of 2017, they were forced to say, you know what, our customer service is appalling, our communication with other providers is appalling, the regulations are appalling, everything is stuffed and no one's wanted to take responsibility for it. At the end of 2017, they said, we will do better next year. And they did. For all the faults they've had in the last 12 months, I'm getting a lot fewer of those horror stories of people contacting me saying, man, I've had no broadband for 3 months. What can you do for me? Tegan, what's it like in your part of the woods? Does it seem to be turning a corner or plunging off a cliff?
I mean, Adam, I'd be able to answer that for you if I had NBN and there wasn't just a hole in front of my house for months on end. Yeah, I do not.
You've got a hole. Luxury.
I know.
Luxury.
You know what? Like, I was tweeting about this a few weeks ago, and I got so many responses from people that have these weird installations that have been happening this year, some that they didn't know about, like wires going to weird places. I mean, things might be better than last year, but I mean, even back in August, you know, it kind of came out that they needed a casual $2 billion to complete the rollout. So I think things are still a little dicey.
Yeah, we're in that funny bit of the build as well, because they're actually starting to tackle the last bits. And I mean, I find it kind of surprising. And if I was the tinfoil hat type, which I know sometimes on the show I am, I might comment that there seem to be an awful lot of technology journalists who don't have NBN connections yet. But obviously that would just be scurrilous gossip. But they're into the tough stuff they've put off. And then this interesting period where they work out what exactly happens. And, of course, I suspect pretty much everyone at NBN Co. is also just holding their breath, waiting to see what happens in the next federal election.
Yeah. Now, Tegan, do you think we've got to the point in the rollout where even if Labor did win next year, they're not going to turn around and say, all right, fibre to the premises for everyone, for you and for you and for you?
No, I can't see how they would ever get the money up to do that, like more than anything. I mean, it'll turn into another, Labor blunder, but this time instead of giving everybody free education like Gough Whitlam did, it's like, what, give everyone some free NBN? I mean, I'll take it, but I don't think they'll be able to afford it.
There is at least, I mean, there's one positive or semi-positive side to this as well. I forget the name of the exact report because there have been so many NBN government reports this year. But one of the more recent ones looking into regional telecommunications suggested that NBN Co should become a co-investor in any technology upgrade. So if you wanted to do that jump from fibre to the node to the premises, where currently it'd cost you, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars. Basically, this report suggested, well, look, actually, NBN Co is going to make a lot of money out of that. They should come along to the party. So even if we don't end up with a free upgrade for everyone, it might become a slightly more affordable upgrade, which is, it's not great, but it's better than bad.
I actually need to see it first. Before we even get to upgrades, I would just like to see it in my house.
Speaking of things that are a little on the shonky side, it hasn't been the best year for privacy breaches and, my health record, encryption legislation, anything to do with security and privacy is probably a year that we'd rather forget. Is that a fair comment?
Yep.
Look, I don't think it is. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that was it. It was just me going, yep.
What was the biggest in that area? What do you think was the biggest disaster? And I mean, there's some tough competition there.
I mean, we're still seeing the Facebook stuff happen. Those new reports over the weekend of the latest thing that they stuffed up. But I think that it really did just kick off this awareness for just, ordinary people in regards to their privacy. And I think that we really saw that come out, not so much in the rage over Facebook, but, the last minute panic over the My Health Record stuff. It was really interesting.
See, I have a position on My Health Record that I think mirrors a lot of people's, but I think My Health Record almost got stuck in that kind of political fulcrum of being some people going, right, I get the tech implications of this, and some people just going, I don't support it for political reasons, and they're slightly different arguments. But Adam, you mentioned this being a year that we'd rather forget. I think, and Tegan, you've kind of alluded to it there, I think this has been a really useful year for it because all of these problems have come to the fore. Point. Because so many more people are aware. Hey, hang on, if I put this on Facebook, I'm giving it to Facebook. What are they doing with it? How are they protecting it? And we're starting to see that big shift. And I mean, we discussed it in last week's show, Adam, with the ACCC kind of stepping in and looking at Google and Facebook as well. Smash. Exactly. We're starting to push towards that idea of, well, actually, our online identities have value. And, Facebook and Google have known this for decades now. Yeah. But the ordinary consumer is becoming aware of that. And I think that's a really powerful, positive step, even though there's an awful lot of pain on the way to getting there. I actually
agree with you, and that exactly what you're saying came out in Google's trend report last week, where it was looking at the most searched terms for Aussies in 2018, and under, I think it was the how-to section, 3 of them were to do with online privacy. It was, how to delete Facebook, how to delete Instagram, and there was something about My Health Record in there as well. So you're absolutely right.
How to opt out of My
Health
Health
Record. Yes, that's right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, it shows that ordinary people are so aware of it now. So no, you know what? I changed my mind. You're absolutely right, Alex.
It's a shame the figures came in a little bit early and we didn't get the end of the year, because I think there'll be a late run on G'day,
mate. Well, just maybe. Although those things tend to spike for a fairly short period. In the telco space, we've seen some interesting stuff happening. And I know we talked 5G just in the last episode, but we also saw the start, although not the conclusion, of TPG and Vodafone coming together in a glorious marriage that, as it turns out, the ACCC doesn't seem to be too keen on. Tegan, do you think 2019 is when they will tie them off?
You know what? I was so sure of it earlier this year, and now I just don't know. I really don't know where to go on this one, because it's all a bit dicey at the moment.
Do you think that we needed that 4th network? Do you think it's going to hurt competition to not have it? Or do you think they were maybe trying to stretch it too far and it's better to get them together?
I mean, it's so odd because I used to be on TPG for years, and it kind of well, it hasn't entirely disappeared. There's still people on it, obviously, but it kind of was out of my mind for a long time. I've gotten quite used to having just this 3-stack of major telcos with a bunch of others that are kind of tapped into the Telstra network and whatnot, but. I always believe that more competition isn't necessarily a bad thing. I don't know, but I'm pretty used to the 3 at the moment.
See, I think the thing with TPG is their ambition was always small in a sense, and I've got to qualify that, in that they really weren't looking at hitting everyone. I think they originally said they were going to hit about 80% of the population. And if you actually look at Australian demographics, nearly 80% of us live in one of the capital cities, and that's it. So their coverage was always going to be a bit shaky. But I think it puts them in a really interesting position as well when we look forward to where 5G is going to go. And I don't want to restate what we said last week. People should go and listen to that episode because it's excellent. But there's this interesting position where TPG and Voda are possibly kind of floating along for a while. And, Telstra and Optus may well come in and gobble up so much of the market that it might become irrelevant whether or not we had a fourth network or not.
Yeah.
But then if they can snap up all that metro-centric bandwidth spectrum that they're interested in and then offer it much cheaper because they're not having to spend so much more to reach out into the regional areas, then it might not matter that they wait if they can undercut the big players because they're only trying to reach, they don't even care about reaching to Geelong and Ballarat sort of thing. But then it will be interesting to see if the ACCC says it's all right to do that and what kind of deals they want to do. But if they really think they can offer dirt cheap 5G bandwidth just in the cities, that could be a winner.
It could work with them, and it's definitely a big play in that traditional TPG unlimited, very cheap space.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And I suppose that also segues nicely into the year in phones, because it's been, for my money, it's been a really fascinating year in phones, even though we've reached this kind of maturity point of actual handsets and technology. Tegan, did you have any particular favourite phones of 2018?
I think one of the things that I'm writing up at the moment are the most unique phones of 2018, because it certainly has been one. Being a bit of a retro girl, I've got to say I'm very happy to see the return of the banana phone. It was nice to see that one thrown back into the mix. But things I found really interesting are the Find X from Oppo, just because I do quite like that little pop-up camera. But for me at the moment, despite all of the controversy surrounding it at the moment, I'm still really loving the Huawei Mate 20 Pro. I usually carry that around with my Samsung Note 9.
So the Mate 20 Pro, I'm in total agreement with you, is the best phone currently you can buy, in my opinion. I find you mentioned Nokia interesting because the 8810 I can kind of take or leave in a way. It's cute, I get that. But what I found really interesting was Nokia put out lots of phones this year, and they were generally really good for the money. There's been this really big upsurge in really pretty good, not premium, not your flagship phones, not your experimental things like the Find X, which I thought was interesting idea, didn't quite work, but hey, good on them for having a try. Yeah. But Nokia just sat there and went, you know what? Here's an affordable phone. Here's an affordable phone. Here's a flagship phone, which, that was a bit ordinary actually. But here's just a bunch of really interesting, affordable Android One phones, really nice little devices, well designed. They weren't alone. In fact, I mean, Oppo had their own stuff in there. Motorola had pieces in that play as well. And certainly a lot of consumers actually seem to be jumping that way as well. They've broken a few iPhones, they've gone to replace them, and they've looked at the price of the XS Max and gone, you what? And moved way down the scale.
100%. I think it's important for manufacturers to know their market. You don't have to be playing up with the big boys. You don't have to be having like $1,000 plus phone. There's plenty of people that can't afford that or don't want to be locked into 24-month contracts in order to have those sorts of phones. There's nothing wrong with being really good at doing mid-range phones. People will buy them. I see that in the traffic that we get when we write about them. People are interested.
Do you think Android Go will get much more of a look in next year? Do you think that the vendors will pay more attention to it and that people will actually pick up on, as you were saying, with because Go's not quite so resource hungry, you can buy a sub $500 phone that's actually still pretty good for basic use.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my experience with Android Go has been fantastic, even with, the cheaper end of the scale phones, so like the Nokia One and your Alcatels that are, under $100.
The Alcatel one was fantastic.
Yeah, it's so good. And, especially when it comes to things like if you're just looking for some simple stuff, you want a smartphone, but you only want the basics and you want something with a really good battery life as well. That's what I really love about it. And it's why I would even consider getting one of these phones as a backup, just because, it took me a long time to even kill the Nokia one in a day when it came to battery, because it's not as resource hungry. I really respect that about them.
Although I reckon with the Nokia One, because it is a slower phone. I mean, you are getting a compromise for that. You're probably using it a bit less. Alcatel, of course, did pretty well this year as well out of ZTE's misfortunes by effectively becoming the default Telstra brand as well, of course. Because all of those cheap Telstra phones are basically
That's right, they're
reskinned.
Yeah, I made sure I tried to find that out because I wasn't sure at the time, and I was quite delighted to find out that they were Alcatels.
And I mean, Alcatel themselves had actually been saying for years, we talk to the telcos on and off, but by and large, we're just selling lots and lots of these rather cheap phones. And now they've got little Telstra badges on the back. We also, of course, this year saw the emergence of, the semi-emergence, they kind of hinted, they lifted the skirt a little bit on foldable phones. Do foldable phones excite you, Tegan?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that's new, I'm going to get excited about. It was kind of fun seeing all of the leaks and rumors come out. You had Samsung looking like they were leading the charge, and then Huawei was coming to the table as well, going, maybe we're going to have ours out first, and then some random Chinese company, I think, were technically first to have a foldable out, but it's been interesting. I don't know how good a first gen foldable is going to be, but you have to start somewhere, and I'm excited to try it.
I do remember back in the day where phones with moving parts, whether it was a sliding keyboard or something like that, that was always the bit that would go, the hinge, the moving part. So getting into foldable devices, I can really see that being the problem is, 13 months later, that bit gives and suddenly it won't stay closed or it won't open or whatever. I reckon that's what they really have to nail, that the durability of the engineering at the right price point.
Having been through a few factory tours, they certainly seem to test them, but you're totally right. There's a difference between, dropping a phone in lab conditions 1,000 times and having it in the back of a, teenager's pair of jeans as they sit down in class a couple of times, and suddenly your foldable phone becomes a squashed phone.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's for that reason that while I'm really excited to see how it actually ends up in execution, what's really been interesting to me, especially the latter half of 2018, is just the amount of interest has actually been around the Samsung Galaxy S10 as opposed to the foldable. There's been so many leaks and rumors, and we had some possible confirmations on some things last week that have been actually quite astounding.
Yeah, I wonder, what's going on at Samsung in a way. I think that they've almost put themselves in between a rock and a hard place, because here's the S10, and it's the phone we know that most people are going to get hyped about because they've got a pretty good market share in that premium space. But we also know that the premium phone buyers are all looking at this foldable thing we started talking about. And if we release that too fast, all the S10 buyers are going to be really ticked off and they'll go and buy a Huawei or something else.
Yeah.
But if we leave it too late, then Huawei will bring out a foldable phone and we'll be done from that side. So Samsung's in a really interesting position here, and I wonder how much of that leaking has actually been accidental.
Yeah, that's a really good point. But, I mean, at the same time, though, it was interesting that, the foldable was, I suppose, shown off to a degree at the Samsung Developer Conference. I mean, it was a dark room. It was on stage for about 5 seconds. And all of that felt like they had been forced to show it. So I think that some of the leaks, whether there was some that were intentional or not, I think some weren't, because it felt like they were forced to show it earlier than they were going to because of Huawei coming out and saying they were going to do something, and because all of these leaks were coming out.
Now, speaking of a forced relationship and a kind of awkward situation, maybe we should talk about our good friends Amazon and how they've done in Australia.
Oh boy.
Now, I have to say that Amazon have continued their habit of making announcements or releasing things when I'm away. They did it again a couple of weeks ago. I was in Vietnam for my brother's birthday, and they quietly got rid of that GST block. So whatever you do on Amazon, can you please just check with me first and just make sure I'm going to be around? So where did we start? Well, we started back in January. Is this time last year they started talking to Journo saying, well, we're bringing the Echo speakers to Australia in January. And that was the big first step after this half-assed release of Amazon Prime with a couple of shows on it. It's available, it's not available. Tegan, we thought it was going to change the world.
Yeah,
not so much.
especially at launch. Like if you go back 12 months, it was not going the way that Amazon thought it was going to go in Australia. A lot of problems were around availability. We just didn't have the amount of products that they have in the US and the UK. So that was a problem. So there wasn't a lot of reason to get excited. But obviously the GST block happened. That didn't help things at all. And then very conveniently, just in time for the Black Friday sales period, which over the last couple of years has become a really big thing in Australia, they removed the block, at least for Amazon fulfillment, not all of the other random vendors that sell through them.
Amazon not quite getting it right meant that they didn't come in and steamroller everyone, and that's meant that an awful lot of other players have really stepped up their game, and we're seeing a bit more of a vibrant online sales market in Australia.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And as someone who, I've been buying online for a really long time as an early adopter, and as someone who would work a lot of retail at the Christmas period, so I won't touch that with a 10-foot pole anymore. It's great to see that Australia's really caught up to the rest of the world in a lot of ways. So now online shopping, especially at this time of year, is fast, it's convenient. And I will say that as much as Amazon has had problems, this time around, I've been using it quite a bit over the last couple of months, and it is a world apart from what it was 12 months ago in Australia.
What about that broader Amazon ecosystem? Because what makes them the 800-pound gorilla in the US is just everything works so well. You've got the smart speakers, you've got the streaming services, you've got your Prime fulfillment. Here, they sort of seem to do half a job of everything. Do you think that we're ever getting closer to something that's similar to what Amazon must be like in America? Because in Australia, it just doesn't translate. We don't, I think, appreciate how massive Amazon is in the US, because in the US, they just do it so well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my brother and sister-in-law live in the US, and they use Amazon for pretty much everything, like grocery deliveries, just all of it. And we're so far away from that in Australia at the moment. So while, yes, I think that will happen eventually, it will not be anytime soon.
On the Prime Video front, they just launched way, way too late, but they are really upping the game in terms of quality series and stuff like that.
Yeah, it is getting better.
So what have they, you said they've added new series. What have we seen coming out of Amazon? I know they had a few things like Man in the High Castle and whatever that driving show is with Jeremy Clarkson. What else have they got that would be worth watching?
Right now is in fact the time to resub, because they've just dropped the second series of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which is just one of the best things I've ever seen on streaming. It's not one for the kids, but it is gloriously, gloriously funny. They've got American Gods, and they've got the other Gaiman Pratchett series, which I will remember in about 5 seconds, and I'll kick myself for forgetting. Good Omens. Thank you, Tegan. That was the one. They've got that coming next year. So they're starting to fill out with stuff that they can offer. Now, yeah, it's weaker than their US or UK offerings, but that is for the reason that they just launched here so late and all those rights had been snaffled up. This is probably not a bad segue, actually, into the streaming space, because with all that theoretically improved NBN, a lot more Australians have gotten into, well, a lot more streaming. Adam, 2018 was a big year for new services, wasn't it?
It was a big year, and we just missed out last week on talking about the Disney deal because we decided to record on Wednesday night instead of Thursday night, and that's what happens, people, when you go early. Yes, the big announcement late last week was that Stan has signed a deal for the Disney content, which I think is not just as much a good thing for Stan, but a real stick it up to Netflix. We're still waiting to see if and when Disney will launch its own streaming service here, the way it is in America. But it's been taking stuff away from Netflix for a while. And I've been meaning to look up, I don't know if there's a timeline on that deal with Stan, if it's only for a certain amount of time, because I wouldn't be surprised if it's only 12 or 24 months and it's just enough to hurt Netflix, keep all that content locked away, so then when Disney is ready to launch here, they can grab it all on launch and not be stuck in that situation that so many others are, where they launch without their best material because they've already licensed it to
on
someone
that,
else.
I think, as far as I'm aware, Stan has stayed pretty tight-lipped on how long the actual deal is for. But I think it's important.
Yeah,
exactly. But I think it's important to remember that Disney Plus isn't even launching in the US until the end of 2019. That's what it's been pegged for. So, I don't think it's going to be at the same time. They'll use that as their first market, I think, before even launching here. And then I think you're probably right. Stan will probably have those rights up until Disney Plus, if and when it launches here. But there also hasn't been any word on, again, they're staying tight-lipped, on whether they're going to be getting the new stuff from next year onto Stan as well. So there's a bunch of new Disney stuff coming out next year, like the new Aladdin, the Lion King. So it'll be interesting to see if they'll get those.
Given they couldn't even tie in the rights to allow offline access to the Disney stuff, I'm going to say they've gone with the cheaper version of the deal, and they're probably not. They'll hold those off for their own debut, I think, which probably means that a bunch of Australians will just pirate them if they want them.
Does Foxtel have a dedicated Disney channel as well? I seem to remember that some of the new Star Wars content was Foxtel exclusive in Australia. Is that right? Pretty sure they have
Disney Kids channel, like a very young,
maybe that's it,
children's channel. But but Foxtel being somewhat sports obsessed is obviously not in my ballpark, as you very well know, Mr. Turner.
Oh, we know your secret is out, man. You can come out of the closet. We know.
Have you got the most expensive KO subscription, Alex? Or
research purposes only.
I wouldn't even know what a KO was, obviously. But this was a weird story to me because it's Foxtel being a bit schizophrenic. It's Foxtel saying, come, get a Foxtel subscription because we have all these sports rights, but also get a KO subscription because we have all these sports rights.
Yeah, it's for people who hate Foxtel. They don't want you to know it's a Foxtel service.
Honestly, I've been waiting for something like this for a long time, and not because I particularly like sports, I don't, but because it seemed like such an obvious thing to launch, to tap into the Aussies that love sport in Australia. And whereas I agree with you, Alex, it's a bit odd that, Foxtel are the ones that have, access to all of this through a Foxtel subscription, but maybe it's also a little bit smart in that they're going to capture both markets. You've got the people who are still dedicated to their old Foxtel accounts, and then you'll get the people who are maybe a little bit more savvy or modern, who know that, okay, yes, KO is a little bit more expensive than other streaming services, but you're not having to buy a basic package to get the sport that you want like you have to do with Foxtel at the moment. Second bite of the cherry, maybe.
It's still a little weird to me, though, because KO has features that Foxtel doesn't. And if you remove that kind of separate content play, KO does like picture-in-picture and spoiler alerts. And to my understanding, again, sports ain't my thing, but to my understanding, you don't get that with Foxtel. And I don't get why they developed that for those apps, which I sort of get is very important to the sports fan community. I don't get why they developed those for this other service and then not also bring it, in home for the theoretically loyal Foxtel subscribers as well. It's just maybe. I find it weird, but I find sports weird, and if I remember correctly, Adam, Optus found getting sports right weird too, didn't it?
Yes. Now, I think Tegan was going to jump in there. I don't want to cut her off, but after that, we'll talk about Optus's own goal at the World Cup.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that perhaps, I'm not a sports expert like Alex is, but perhaps they're, doing this to future-proof, their offerings. But no, let's get into the World Cup because we know that Kidman's all about it.
That is the disaster. That is the textbook disaster that people will turn to for the next few years. And because one of the big things with Foxtel and the launch of KO is because Foxtel's locked away a lot more of the Australian cricket this year. So there'll be some Australian cricket matches that you would have been able to watch on free-to-air television in the past that are now only on Foxtel. So when those matches are going to come along, there's going to be a big load on KO, and then KO will have to make sure that they don't do an Optus Sport. So all eyes will be the fact that it's called an Optus Sport. It's almost like doing a homer, right? I think when you totally destroy your rights, streaming so bad you have to give the rights back. We'll just call it doing an Optus Sport.
I like it.
Pretty
I
good
like
news
it.
for SBS, though, wasn't it?
It was great news for SBS. It was great news for people who didn't want to pay for Optus Sport, but it was bad news for the streaming ecosystem because they want to build people's confidence in this. This stuff is supposedly going to be the future. There are more and more rights that are getting locked away in these streaming services. This was the big one, and they muffed it. And the thing is, everyone knew they were going to muff it because they muffed the EPL for a couple of years as well. So they knew it was coming, still couldn't get it right. It does not give me a lot of confidence for the future of streaming. And it's not that it can't be done right. It's just that you've got to actually make the effort to do it.
Having some infrastructure tends to help. But what I do find interesting is with KO is that they didn't manage to secure the rights for the Australian Open.
The Australian Open what?
Don't pretend, Alex. All right, can I just ask really quickly, can someone explain to me what 10 All Access actually is? Because I have never looked into it because I don't actually care. Like, what? Is it just the stuff they already show?
It's CBS All Access with the Star Trek cut out and lots of Cheers episodes.
Yeah, okay, pass.
Is the harsh way to put it.
Probably some Bonanza in there.
It will get better in that it will offer certain CBS shows directly after they've aired in the US and before they air on 10. That's their big dangling carrot. But, of course, CBS has to have a big hit show that entices you as an individual viewer before that actually picks up a great deal of value. Also, actually, to be fair, it'll get an awful lot better once they have the new Jean-Luc Picard Star Trek series on there, because that's when I'll be putting my money down.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah,
Okay,
nice.
I've circled back around then.
So, of course, we couldn't sum up 2018 without talking about a topic that's very close to Tegan's heart, crazy Elon Musk.
Absolutely.
Tell us your best crazy Elon Musk stories.
I mean, oh God, where to start? Like, what a year for Elon Musk. Like, between, deciding that he was going to tweet about, taking a Tesla private with, $4.20 a share because he wanted to impress his young girlfriend, to subsequently getting in some sort of weird feud with Azalea Banks, to then being kicked off the board of directors because of his tweets, because it looked like he was, purposely messing with the share prices of his company. And now the ex-Telstra CEO has taken his place on the board of Tesla. So it's been a wild ride, to say the least.
And you completely passed over the flamethrower.
I have to leave something for you guys.
That wasn't even the craziest thing. But that wasn't the thing. Is that the flamethrower wasn't even worth mentioning? Shows you how crazy a year it was.
It's because there's too much. Like, I've been writing a year in review of Elon Musk, and it's just there's always more, guys. There's always more.
Well, that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Queen Tegan for joining us.
You're very welcome, mates.
And as always, we love to get your feedback on the show, so feel free to drop us a comment via Twitter or the Vertical Hold Facebook page.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. That about wraps it up for us for 2018. We're taking a 2-week break, but we'll be back with the CES special straight from Vegas in early January. We'd like to say thanks to our great sponsor, Belkin, for their ongoing support, as well as thanks to all our fantastic guests through the year like Tegan, who share their passion and expertise with us every week. Plus, we'd especially like to thank our growing band of listeners who've made 2018 our best year yet. And remember, if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button. If you've already subscribed, tell your friends, leave us a review, and help us have a fantastic 2019. Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, is proudly brought to you by Belkin.
I tell you what a streaming service needs to do to get all of my money is to put all of MASH on it. I don't care which one, but I will pay for that.